Joining us now to help us break down this shift is Anthony Leonardi, a breaking news reporter at the Washington Examiner. So, Anthony, we've seen this outbreak kind of have a development over the past couple of weeks as far as the media coverage. At first, for example, I know that some were skeptical about the president's travel restrictions. As time has moved on, it seems now that travel restrictions are the measure that's being taken by a lot of countries around the world. Is there more of a unified approach when it comes to this outbreak now that we know more about it from the media?
There has been a more unified message as of now. It really started when we saw the president announce increased travel restrictions to Europe. They started to say that this was an unprecedented move, not since the time, Chris Cuomo since the time of war have we seen something like that. You also have seen tailored media coverage based on the reaction of politicians at the time. Originally, Democrats such as Nancy Pelosi were criticizing President Trump over his knowledge of the coronavirus, and thus you saw a back and forth there. But really, you've seen a more united front in terms of the politicians that are handling this, and then the media have been responding in suit.
And I actually think it's a good thing. I know a lot of people may say that it kind of shows the hypocrisy or the politicization of this, but I think it's more of a testament to the idea that people are starting to recognize the seriousness of what we're facing right now and are kind of putting politics to the side and kind of trying to figure out what exactly we can do to really stop this crisis altogether. And I think that I've seen the same shift from the White House overall, too. I mean, I've actually think that they've done a pretty decent job handling this throughout the entire time. I think that they are taking the appropriate measures right now. But there has been a little bit of a shift since the beginning, hasn't there?
There has been a slight shift, yes. Originally, well, the White House task force would argue that the data that they're receiving is constantly evolving. So they're treating the situation with the data that comes in. So that's why you saw President Trump attempting to downplay the situation. Originally, he said that there was a very low risk of infection and that those who are only high-risk patients, such as patients that are 60 years old and above, should worry about this. But now you're seeing him taking the economic situation that we're in seriously and the amount of infections or confirmed cases seriously. So there has been, they would argue that as the data has come in and there's been evolved circumstances, they've changed their course. And so that's why you see the president argue that this is why he's been consistent, but he's only changed insofar as what the White House has received.
And we've seen outside reports from that as well, saying that, for example, outside studies from London and other parts of Europe kind of made their way to the White House. And that's when the White House kind of readjusted its position. And once again, I think that's a good thing. I think as more information comes to light, you should be changing your position, because if you're stuck in the same ways, I don't think you're properly addressing something that is just maybe 3 months old. I mean, this epidemic started, I think you could go back maybe as far as December of last year when it first kind of started kicking off in China, but it's still a relatively new phenomenon. So do you think that this is going to be something that we continue to see moving forward, where kind of perspectives change a little bit, but people are a little bit more united in the responses overall?
Yes, certainly. If you see the way that the White House has responded, and frankly, members of Congress have said we're all in this together. That's the central messaging that you've seen. But by the most optimistic of scales, people don't anticipate the peak of this virus to be 2 weeks from March 14th, and at the most cynical estimates, 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. So it depends on what the infection rates are going forward. The president has said that he doesn't anticipate normal routine to resume until late July, August. So I do think that if the messaging does stay the same from the White House, from members of Congress, from the media, then you will see a more united front.
I think you're right. And it's an interesting time, too, because I think it's good that people are, for the most part, putting politics to the side and recognizing the fact that people's lives are actually in danger right now. And I mean that from not only a contagion standpoint, being the coronavirus, but also from a financial standpoint right now. People are staying at home. They're losing their jobs. There's a real crisis coming from different angles right now. And I would argue that it's actually an appropriate response. But at some point, the election is coming up. We're going to see it deteriorate. Do you think that'll be maybe when it comes to the general election more so, and the two candidates are kind of differing in how they would approach this issue?
If they do, they have to be careful, because you don't want to be seen as the candidate that's politicizing a crisis, especially a pandemic. You've seen Senator Bernie Sanders utilize the issue to promulgate Medicare for all and other policy positions, and Vice President Joe Biden has suggested that he would be better equipped to handle a crisis. But from the messaging you're getting from Democrats, especially from state Democrats such as Andrew Cuomo, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California, said that the administration's handling things just well. They've received everything that they've asked for, and that they're in total cooperation. So I do think that if they do, they'll have to be careful about it. But likely what you'll see is what a more united front. In crises, people tend to unify.
I hope you're right. Although we have heard in the past, I think it was Rahm Emanuel who said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I hope that's not the route that they take. The unity is actually something of a silver lining that I've seen throughout this entire outbreak. But Anthony, thank you very much for coming on and breaking this down for us.